Ready to roll? Good afternoon. This is the time and place for the Legal and Finance Committee meeting, September 11, 2024. We'll begin with roll call and determination of quorum.
Beaverdorf?
Here.
Evans?
Here.
Montfort?
Here.
Roseman?
Here.
Stroman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we get into the meeting, I think before we do any business, today is 9/11. And it's a day I think it's appropriate for us to reflect upon the events of 23 years ago and also express our gratitude and our appreciation for our military and first responders here in this locality and around the country who valiantly serve us day in and day out. So could we please have a moment of silence? Thank you. Now we'll go on to the adoption of the agenda. Motion by Beaverdorf, second by Roseland. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Now is the time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. And I don't see any speaker request forms, so I'm going to close general public comment. We'll move on to consent items 1 through 12. I'm going to open public comment on consent items 1 through 12. And no speaker requests for those items. I'm going to close public comment on items 1 through 12. Does any council member, well, I guess next time, the approval of the minutes for the August 28th.
Move to approve.
Motion by Roseland, second by Evans to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item, we'll go to the, I guess I'll ask if any of the committee persons have any items they wish to pull from the consent agenda for further discussion. Otherwise, we'll go to the Finance Department. Ian? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 is simply stating again one volunteer for the RSVP program and one for the library. They are included under the city's workman's compensation purposes, so they have to be included in our minutes. Item number 3 is a resolution that declares some property surplus. That's going to be for a 2005 truck that is going to be scrapped in the streets department, just so that everyone is aware. The replacement vehicle is valued at approximately $372,000. The city did receive a grant for $160,000 of that from, I believe it was the VFW settlement, and a portion of that requires that the vehicles that they be replaced be scrapped. And so just so everyone is aware, that's why we're not trying to resell that vehicle. That's a condition of the grant. Item number 4 is the first addendum to our CDBG grant agreement with HUD. That changes our indirect costs. Item number 5 is our annual 2023 auditor's report. We do have our auditors here. Tracy would be able to provide a brief review of the audit and if there's any questions for her. But I think before she starts, I just really want to recognize our Deputy Finance Director, Dave Uhas. He spends a significant amount of his time throughout the entire year preparing for this audit. Has done a fantastic job. And so Dave is, of course, supported by everyone else in the finance office in doing this, but this really is a tremendous amount of his job, and he's done a fantastic job. But please, Tracy.
And I will echo the same thing to start with, is a thank you to Dave and the rest of your finance folks, whether it be in the finance office or your various departments. They gather a lot of information to get through the audit process. We appreciate their efforts. From a summary standpoint, in terms of the audit process, we do two things in this process. One is a financial statement audit in terms of your financial numbers, and the other is a compliance audit related to your federal grant programs. And so in terms of the results of those audits, the financial statement audit and the compliance audit both resulted in what we refer to as unmodified or clean opinions. So a positive result in terms of the actual results of the audits. No compliance findings on the compliance audit side, so that is also positive. Part of the audit process also includes us taking a look at the city's internal controls, how you process your accounting information. And in that review of those internal controls, we did have two findings. One relates to the fact that the city is large, has numerous departments, and there's certain situations where sometimes financial information or certain transactions aren't always communicated to the finance department. And so then sometimes things get overlooked and missed. And we did have a situation where there was a very large adjustment made during the audit process. And that's the second finding, is that if we, during our audit process, make adjustments, we have to let you know that. And so that was the second finding. So those were the two things that we came across in terms of the internal control side of things, but overall a successful audit process at the end of the day. And I will take any questions that anybody has. We did meet yesterday in terms of go through some of those details with those members that wanted to. And so I think that was a positive process as well.
Thank you. We'll go to Bill Evans.
Yeah, I would just like to thank you guys for that very informative session we had yesterday. I think those of us that went learned a lot of things. You know, we lay people don't necessarily understand the language, the category, any of that stuff, but it provided a lot of clarity to those of us that were there. So, well, thanks for the good job doing that yesterday.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions for Tracy? Let's go on to the next item then. Daniel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 5 is some abatements from the Director of Equalization. Actually, it's one. It's in regards to a Verizon tower where the tower is actually assessed twice, once under utility by the state and then another by the property. And so it's taken off the valuation from the regular property rolls. Item number 7 is a resolution that levies assessments for the abatement of nuisances that were done by our community code enforcement, division. And you can see the photos on it. There was a lot of cleanup work that was done on several different properties. The next item then, item number 8, I just want to point out that there is incorrect numbering on that resolution. It should be 2024-073, and it's just supporting a TAP grant to the state, Transportation Alternative Grant, and that would be to reconstruct the trails that are at Mary Hall Park. That was an item that we applied for last year. Unfortunately, we did not receive that, but we're trying again. Are there any questions?
Okay, there's a motion by Evans and a second by Bieberdorf to approve items 2 through 8, is it? Yep. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll go to Community Development, Director Fisher.
Is the annual agreement that we enter into with South Dakota Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources for our air quality program. That program is administered by Morgan Twombly, and Morgan is sitting in the back row with a black and white striped shirt on. I pointed out I want you folks to get to know her. She is doing a stellar job in administering this program and bringing more and more properties into compliance. As a part of this agreement, it is transitioning that $60,000 state funds to us for distribution, and this is what is primarily used to fund Morgan's position. Item number 10 is our Transportation Improvement Program final report. Kip Harrington is also in the audience today. Thank you, Kip. We brought this before you a couple meetings ago in a draft form. At that time, we did bring Kip up to the lectern, and he went into a little detail about some of the streets that were included. If you still need some reminding of those, he's here today to help us. But again, it's just now bringing forward the final plan. Nothing else has changed from what we had previously presented to you.
Thank you, Vicki. Any questions for Vicki or Kip? Motion by Bieberdorf and a second by Maher to approve 9 through 10. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll go to the Fire Department. Chief Culberson.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. We have two items today. The first one is to renew the joint powers agreement between DPS, Department of Public Safety for State of South Dakota, their state radios, Pennington County, and the City of Rapid City. This is for our dispatch center, allow us to work together cooperatively. Our dispatch center brought on DPS, I don't know, several years ago. I think this is the second, at least, joint powers agreement that I'm aware of. This allows us to work together. Signed it last time. The change this time would be allows that the director of that agency, of our dispatch center, doesn't have to be a DPS employee. It can come from one of the user agencies, which is police department, fire department, Pennington County, or the state of South Dakota. Any questions on that one? Number 12 is then another resolution for writing off uncollectible ambulance patient accounts. Been working on this for quite a few months now. This is, I think, month 6 that we're bringing. Unfortunately, I'll be bringing some more as we continue to dig through our old software and get it cleaned up to move on beyond that. We're finding more accounts than we knew were there. So just in the way that they were coded and put in the system. So have someone that's pretty much dedicating portion of her time to find these to get them cleaned up. As you'll see in this report, they're from 2013. So I've asked her to go back and make sure she's really focused in on 1 year periods to bring forward and make it to the point where we are then going to be to that 7-year mark. So,
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief? Motion by Bieberdorf, a second by Roseland to approve 11 and 12. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the end of the consent calendar. Now we'll go into non-consent items 13 through 16. I'm going to open public comment on items 13 through 16, but seeing no speaker request forms, I'm going to close public comment on items 13 through 16. And next we'll go to item 13, which is Public Works presentation and update on the EPA Climate Pollution Reduction Grant.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, City Council members, and other directors here today. I'm Lysanne Zeller, the Sustainability and Stewardship Program Development Manager housed in Public Works. As I think most of you are aware, in 2023 we were awarded a grant from the EPA called the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, which is focused on planning activities for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in our community and the area beyond. We're here today to give you a little bit of an update on the process. We do have some consultants that have been in town yesterday and today helping us do some community engagement and things. They'll also be giving the presentation today. So we have Chris and Soraya here with SSG Sustainability Solutions Group, as well as Therese and Robin. If they'll wave, they're also here supporting this effort. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris to give the presentation.
Thanks, Lysanne. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, council members and directors. Appreciate the time to give you this little presentation. So brief agenda, a little bit of an introduction to the process that we've been going through, introduce to you guys the greenhouse gas inventory and the projections that have been made so far, and then just talk about some funding opportunities for some of the work that will hopefully come out of this plan. So as Lysanne said, we've been working on this for a little while now. We've already done the priority plan, which was doing kind of an inventory of just Rapid City. As we'll talk, this has been expanded to more of the I-90 corridor from Spearfish to Rapid City to over to Box Elder. From the priority plan, there was a number of priority actions that have come out of that were used to apply for some funding. So that part has been completed now. Now we're on to the comprehensive plan, which is basically building off of the priority plan. So again, looking, broadening the scope of that project and diving deeper into more actions that we can look at to comprehensively model emission reductions and look at co-benefits from those actions. So again, focusing on the I-90 corridor from Spearfish to Box Elder. Here's the map that represents the geography that we're looking at. So again, not just the communities themselves, but all the way along the corridor of the I-90 there as well. So any residents and along that corridor would be included in this analysis. As far as the process goes, so again, the PCAP or the priority plan has been completed, but there is from data collection all the way up to the implementation grant process. Now from the CCAP, we've done some data collection. I've done the model we've done the model calibration, and we've generated the reference scenario, and now we're here engaging the public to get thoughts about what we have so far and what the situation looks like along the I-90 corridor, and then getting ideas about what actions or what direction the community would like to take this project going forward in the future. So as part of the engagement strategy, we're in phase 1, which has happened along the spring and the fall. So outreach engagement, task force workshops, which have been happening yesterday afternoon and this morning. The council presentations to you all. So again, we met yesterday with some other council members and did the same presentation. And we've been doing some pop-up meetings around the community, gathering feedback from residents within Rapid City. Phase 2 will look fairly similar. So again, once we've done further modeling of the plan of the actions that the community would like to see engaged in, we'll be coming back, or we'll be meeting again with the task force to review those results. We'll also like to give you all an update on the results as well. And then along the way, we'll be doing more focus group discussions on various sectors within the plan to further get ideas on how what kind of actions they would like to look at, and then there'll be a public open house. And the final phase, which will be happening in the spring and summer of 2025, will be basically presenting the kind of final draft of the plan to the various parties that I've talked about, so public meeting, the task force, as well as sustainability committee meetings, and to the council as well. So it's just some of the things that have come up that we'll be looking at. There's opportunities for increasing renewable energy mix within the community, looking at retrofitting existing buildings and making them more comfortable for the residents within the community. Different emissions-free vehicle options, not just necessarily electric vehicles, but other vehicle types as well. What kind of fuel switching opportunities could there be? Looking at planning in the community to increase active transportation and transit use, making the community a little more accessible to the residents along the I-90 corridor, well, within the communities and along the I-90 corridor itself. Looking at new building construction and the opportunities that there could be there to make the buildings just more comfortable and livable for the community members, and opportunities within industry. So what we have so far is this is a graph of GHG emissions by sector. So you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, is the emissions from electricity. Electricity right now is the biggest emitting sector or fuel in the community, mainly because the grid that is used to generate electricity has a mixture of coal in it. So you're burning coal to generate electricity. As we'll see, there's future plans to decrease the reliance on coal in the future by the utilities that are part of the grid that Rapid City sits in. The next biggest is industrial processes. So these are emissions generated not from the burning of any fuels, but just from the process itself. So for example, when you're creating cement, the drying of the limestone releases CO2 as part of the process. So you're not necessarily burning anything, but that process does release greenhouse gas emissions into the air. Mobile combustion, as the name implies, is the emissions from driving around, so burning gasoline and diesel. So what are the opportunities for reducing that? Stationary combustion consists of natural gas or propane or other fuels used for heating buildings or heating hot water in buildings, operating your buildings and things in that nature. And then solid waste and wastewater treatment is basically the methane generated from the breaking down of waste in the landfills and of the biosolids coming from the wastewater. Looking at it in a different way, so breaking it out by the sector, so you can see, again, electricity and residential energy, commercial and industrial sectors is the biggest emitter right now, and that will change over time, again, with changes to the grid. But you can see also too that gasoline is also a big emitter or a big contributor to the transportation sector with the industrial process emissions, kind of that big yellow bar there. So we've created a business as usual projection, which is basically taking where we are right now and projecting it forward simply by looking at population and employment growth in the sector and not changing any activities within those communities. So using the same intensities of energy and the same types of fuels. So no intervention has been taking place. And you can see, as you would expect, as you're putting more people into the community, your energy requirements are going to go up. And so you can see transportation being one of the biggest energy users in the area, and electricity, kind of natural gas and gasoline, all kind of contributing the same amount of that energy pie. Looking at emissions, so as you can see, it's a little bit of a different trajectory. You might have expected it to follow the same trajectory as the energy, but because the natural, like I said, the electricity, the grid and the electricity grid is getting cleaner by the projections from, well, I have a couple of projections. One of them from Black Hill Energy itself has a target of 70% reduction of emissions by 2030, and then NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab, also has a similar trajectory that they're using. So I've applied that to the projections. So that's why you see the blue line in the bottom right-hand corner going down so significantly. Is it including that assumption into that? But all the other emissions are going up in comparison or along with the amount of energy that's being used. So not only are we looking at kind of the environmental impacts of this plan, but there are also a lot of economic benefits that we have found in our work that come along with making these changes. So job creation, so there's a lot of green technologies and infrastructure projects that create employment opportunities across various sectors. So from renewable energy to energy efficiency retrofits, so working on buildings and making them, again, more comfortable for the residents within the community. So energy savings, so improving energy efficiency and transitioning to renewable or alternative energy sources can reduce energy costs for businesses and householders over time. So there is the initial investment in making that, but the maintenance and operating costs of those facilities does decrease over time, and the fuel savings does add up. There's also health benefits. Reducing air pollution and promoting healthier lifestyles can lower healthcare costs within the communities as well. There's also enhanced resilience, so adapting infrastructure and community to climate impacts helps avoid costly damage from extreme weather events such as fires or floods that we have seen increasing over time. There's increased property values, so properties in well-planned, community-resilient areas may see increased value to a lower risk and improved living conditions, so making the area more desirable to live. Long-term economic stability, so mitigation and adaptation efforts can protect economies from volatility of climate-related disruptions, so providing a more stable economic environment, for people to want to come live and to invest in as well. So there are funding opportunities for these, just briefly touching on some of them. You might be familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, so large pools of money that the federal government has provided to communities across the country to be able to tap into to help fund some of these changes. So again, investment is needed, but there is money out there that can be used to make this to help with this transition, and just again showing kind of a breakdown on how some of these funds can be distributed to the various kind of initiatives and actions. So I'll leave it at that and open the floor to any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the committee? I have one, sir, if I could. You mentioned the large percentage of coal-fired or generated electricity. And do you see prospects for alternatives like nuclear or solar, wind farms, hydroelectric, anything like that?
Yeah, that's definitely on the horizon. And like I said, there's already a transition to some of those, but there's definitely room for further movement in that direction that we can definitely explore as part of this plan.
In our part of the country, would you anticipate those things happening? Or would it just be generated elsewhere, or would it be generated here?
Oh, well, there's already lots of actually renewables in South Dakota. Wind is definitely a large percentage of the generation. Actually, a lot of the coal fire is actually outside of the borders of South Dakota itself, but unfortunately, as South Dakota is situated in a bigger electricity kind of generation zone, all of the electricity doesn't just come from one point, it's all kind of mixed together. So those have to be transitioned as well. So the utility players play a kind of fold outside of just state boundaries, unfortunately. So yeah, so it's not fully in control of the one spot.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Bill Evans.
There it is. As I sat through the workshop today, I just had one question. Where did the name I-90 corridor, where that name come from? Because does it really represent all of it? I think the corridor down to Hill City and even on to Custer, perhaps Hysiga, that way, down to Hermosa and Hot Springs is just as valid. I'm just wondering where that name came from.
Yeah, so it really came from staff, myself, working with the grants division. So it was just a name that we chose to focus since we were focusing on the I-90 corridor. Obviously, planning for greenhouse gas reductions is a much broader, it's the entire region, but we sort of had to draw a line in the sand somewhere since we're just starting. It was sort of overwhelming to involve everyone. The grant was also specifically for Meade and Pennington counties. We expanded out to Spearfish with the approval of the EPA because that's the second largest community in western South Dakota. So it was just an area of focus. It could easily be expanded. We were actually at the library yesterday. We had a couple from Custer that said they wanted to be involved. So it's there's opportunity there to expand. We've kind of coined this I-90 corridor as our focus area, but it's hard to really draw a line in the sand for some of this work.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to acknowledge? Motion by Evans, second by Roseland to acknowledge. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll go to the Finance Department. Introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6635, an ordinance regarding supplemental appropriation number 5 for 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The item in front of you for the next supplemental appropriation is primarily includes the additional budgetary authority for the AFSCME and non-union wage adjustments that went into effect this year. As you might recall, in March, there were adjustments to the AFSCME wages that were part of the wage study that was completed January, February of this year. And then in addition, AFSCME as well as non-union employees did receive a CPI or COLA increase in July. And those different actions were not included on purpose in the 2024 budget. The reason for that is because they were under negotiations and there was a desire to not necessarily budget an amount in the budget when negotiations were ongoing. So that's the majority of what is included in this supplemental appropriation. There's also setting up the TID 91 fund with the loan amount of $7.28 million. And so when you look at the total dollar amount, that is the majority of it. But again, that's just setting up that TID loan that the council approved at, I believe, its last council meeting, or maybe it was 2 council meetings ago. Other than that, there's a couple of projects that are just carried forward that were not completed last year. And there is some transferring of some airport funds that were left over that are going to the airport CIP to assist in the construction of the terminal expansion. Are there any questions?
I have a quick question, Daniel. So, obviously, we have this money is on hand to make this appropriation.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Can I get a motion on item 14? Motion by Maher and a second by Bieberdorf to approve. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll go to community development for second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6631, an ordinance adopting section 17.40.055 to add usable open space requirements to the office commercial district for multifamily dwellings and assisted living centers. Ms. Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you may recall, at City Council for first reading, you did point out, and thank you for doing so, that the language was such that it could be interpreted in a couple different ways as to where that 400 square foot open space applied. Did we require it within each residential dwelling unit? If the dwelling unit was less than 400 square feet, did it not then have to have an outdoor open space or indoor open space requirement? And taking your lead and listening back carefully to the tape of the meeting, we brought forward the language that helps clarify that. And I'll read it out loud quickly. For multiple family dwellings, there shall be usable open space of not less than 400 square feet for each dwelling unit. And then we duplicated that language of 170 square feet for each room or suite associated with a assisted living center. So thank you for pointing that out. It'll help us down the road. And with that, we are requesting that you bring this forward to council with the recommendation to approve.
Thank you. Director Fisher, any questions or comments? Can I get a motion on item 15? Motion by Evans, second by Roseland to approve. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll go back to Ms. Fisher for approved resolution number 2024-064, a resolution to create tax increment financing district and resolution to adopt project plan for Annan Housing Development TID number 92 for property generally described as being located at the current northern terminus of Reservoir Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this TID request has come out of both the TIF Committee and the Planning Commission with recommendations to approve. Just in short summary, it's a $7.8 million TIF request to bring forward a residential development of 156 lots. 84 of them are proposed to be affordable. And one of the great parts about this TIF is there's a stretch of Reservoir Road that extends north of Homestead to the subject property that we are discussing that had secured variances and or exceptions from council in past years. It's not the responsibility of this developer to make those improvements, but in approving that project at the north end of that area, it then is onus to the city to bring forward that improvement. The developer in this case, who's sitting in the audience today, is in somewhat partnering with the city and including those costs as a part of this TIF so that we can get Reservoir Road extended from Homestead Street up to their project site and through their project site. And if you might, Mike Dugan is our TIF planner. He actually works out of the finance department, but with your approval, Mr. Chair, Mike could give us a brief presentation on how those numbers crunch.
Please, thank you.
Good afternoon. So I'll briefly just give a quick presentation about this proposed new development. So this development is off Homestead, or in that Homestead area. The yellow on this slide is the city limits, and then off to the side of the slide is in black bold is the boundary. This is an up close picture of the TID boundary. So as Director Fisher had mentioned, this will complete Reservoir Road, extended up to the future intersection of East Anamosa Street. And with this TID request as well, it will grade a portion of East Anamosa. That will open up this 156 home development. 84 of those homes are going to be smaller scale homes, and the remaining 72 will be single family homes. The smaller scale homes will be priced at $190,000 and below, and the remaining 72 single-family homes will be priced at or below the first-time home buyer's purchase price for the state of South Dakota, and currently that's at $385,000. So this will adjust year by year based upon where that is at by the forecast of the state of South Dakota. The zoning, currently, this is in the yellow there, this is low-density residential. Major street plan, Reservoir Road is identified as a principal arterial street. So that will be the Reservoir Road connection up to the future East Anamosa. And with the grading of a portion of East Anamosa, the dotted blue line through the top part of the TID boundary is the proposed extension of East Anamosa. This is an up close. The green will be the lot layout of the 156 homes. There's the purple line through there is proposed storm sewer. The blue is the proposed 12-inch water main improvements through Reservoir Road there. And then the top part of your slide where it says grading only, that section of where the 156 homes are built, that section of the TID boundary, that's where the grading will come through of East Anamosa Street. The proposed TID funded costs with capital costs, professional fees, and contingencies estimated at just over $3.6 million. Financing costs of approximately $4.4 million for the subtotal of eligible project costs of a little over $7.8 million. And then with the city administration fee and now the new county administration fee that will carry forward to future projects and amendments of $15,000, the total eligible project cost for this development is just over $7.8 million. This is the proposed total project cost. This slide identifies the total costs of improvements for this development. As you can see, this in phases, phase 1, 2, and 3, and then Reservoir Road there is broken out with the project costs of just over $3.6 million. The total cost of this development is just over $11 million. Projections, the anticipated base valuation is approximately $3.3 million, and there is a projected payoff period of 15 years, which is below the 20-year maximum that can be allowed for repayment. The schedule improvements for the projected increment, this will be done in phasing as far as the construction of the houses, starting in 2028 with 49 houses, and then completion of the 156 homes by 2030. The increase in valuation is estimated by the finish of the construction of these homes to be $63,800,000. I'm sorry, in the increase. Projected tax revenue from this district is projected to generate approximately $12.8 million that can be used for repayment. On the slide previous slides, the total project cost with financing is estimated a little over $7.8 million. So this more than pays back that the costs. Note amortization, this shows the first few couple of years are capitalized as far as the interest, and then full repayment by 2039. The project sources and uses, the two bottom slides, the sources and uses without reservoir TIF, this is as if the TIF wasn't a part of this project, so which means the conventional bank loan ask would be higher at approximately $7.5 million. As you can see in the top slide, the lot sale summary, the lots are projected to generate a little over $5.8 million in revenue. So as you can see, that it would a little under $2 million would be the shortfall without the TIF. The bottom slide shows the bank loan coming down, and then the addition of the Reservoir Road TIF then this does show what the use of TIF funds. This is possible, and without the use of TIF funds, this project wouldn't be able to proceed. The last slide here is breaking out the return, the percent return. So with the uses and the sources, and then coming down to the gross income, less taxes, the net income on this project for the developer is a little over 1.1 million, which comes out to a little under a 10% rate of return. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions from the committee? I just have one that I appreciate your presentation. I think it looks like like it's going to be a successful TID for us. But on your first slide, you had a map of the city limits.
Yeah.
And I noticed about in the middle of the page, there's where it says the valley there's that portion of white that's enclosed by it's surrounded by city limits, but what's that area there?
I might need some help on that one.
Where it says valley, it's white there. It's just, okay, Vicki, do you want to hit
Thank you,
that?
Mr. Chair. So there is a mobile home park that sits within this area, and then some other land that has yet not been fully developed out. We did several years ago come in to annex this entire area and to include all of this. There was a pushback from these property owners to the council at that time. We were concerned that it was going to create a donut hole in the middle of the city limits. There was even a city council member who was in support of removing it that said, "Who doesn't love donuts?" And it does create some issues with maintenance between the city and the county, but ultimately over time, this area does need to come into the city limits and comply with the same design standards as its neighboring properties.
Thank you for that explanation, Vicki. I was just curious. We'll go to Bill Evans.
I wasn't going to say anything, but since you brought it up with this map, we look at this and we see this outlying area again being developed, and I'm going to support this project. But I think everybody knows that we've got to start directing more of these TIFs and TIDs, whatever we want to call them, toward the center of the city to start building some density. Obviously, they aren't getting used for that, which is, I think, was one of the major intents when they started allowing them in the first place. So just as we look at this map, you see it's kind of like a sprawl fest as we allow these things to go on the in the suburban areas. And we have created, you mentioned donut, but we've got kind of a donut density city right now with these gigantic apartment complexes being built on the outskirts. And that is a high maintenance design. It's high maintenance in terms of utilities. It's high maintenance in terms of transportation in every way. So we need to revisit how we offer these things to people and provide some incentive to maybe recovering some of the core density that we sorely lack in this town. I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Can I get a motion on the item? Motion by Evans, second by Roseland to approve. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. And surprise, Bill has another comment to make, and so we're going to go to Bill.
Well, I could have said it during the EPA thing, but I was investigating solar opportunities for my own home this week and found that South Dakota had turned down this $70 million grant, a rebate program called the House Energy Rebates Program to help people install solar panels on their house and everything. As it turns out, we're the only state in the United States that turned this down, in the infinite wisdom of our governor. Evidently, she's smarter than the other 49 because they all accepted it. And I think there's a gross misunderstanding about how this program worked. Well, we've already paid our taxes in, they're gone. I would like to get some of that back to help me out. People in Nebraska and North Dakota and Wyoming and Montana and every other state you can find has accepted that. So, the deadline for applying for the state was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I've since found out that there may be a movement from people in this state to get it extended and ask the government to give us another chance. And if we do so, I think it would behoove this city council, and I'm going to be doing some checking to see if Sioux Falls feels the same way, to write a letter of support for such a extension to get some of this money back. I mean, it doesn't do me any good to be paying for houses in Colorado and helping them put solar panels on their homes. So I may be coming forth with some kind of a resolution. I think it would be very wise for the city to support such a thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Bieberdorf, second by Roseland to adjourn. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. Are you going to the municipal league?
Why would you do that? The only one last year when I was here.
Well, yeah, I did too for a little bit.
You guys have any questions on the Cornerstone stuff we're talking about? I met with Lisa Allison this morning. When's it gonna come back? She just resubmitted the application today.